And welcome back. Anger over government spending seems to be a situation that just does not change. It doesn't matter who's in control or what party is in office. People are unhappy about taxes, and they're unhappy about the way the government is spending their tax money. The question is, what exactly can be done? Ed Flentje of the Hugo Wall School joins us. And Ed, you had a column that appeared in newspapers across the state this last week, and it was an interesting take on things, and it seemed kind of like a logical take on things to me, but I don't know if logic and government often go together.
Well, spending is on the agenda everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here locally, school district, the county, the city, at the state level, and with a few exceptions, it's on the agenda across the country in state and local government, and obviously at the national level. And it made me think of a fellow I worked for some time,
mm-hmm.
Former Governor Bennett, who had a kind of a watchword on all of this. He said, spending is more responsible when government that spends is the government that must finance that spending.
Makes sense.
And he was at the time kind of besieged by federal folks dangling carrots and wanting to tell him what state government should do. On the other hand, he was besieged by local folks who wanted more state revenues in their local coffers. And his philosophy has actually ended a lot of revenue sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly has in Kansas, and many states are getting rid of that, and the national government has, and a lot of grant programs. But the long and short of it is $1 trillion, that's with a T, $1 trillion moves from one government to another government, and often from that second government to a third government. There is just a lot of money through all sorts of programs moving through the system, and I wonder if Bennett's idea maybe isn't applicable as folks try to get government on a sustainable course. I mean, everybody's trying to work on this, and this system we have of money moving across from one level of government to the next is, I think, at the root of kind of cynicism, distrust, and outright anger at government. In this column, I suggested to folks that are working on this that they go back and read some work by Alice Revlin, who has been at this for many years. She was the first director of the Congressional Budget Office, and she recently, with former Senator Domenici, come out with a debt reduction plan. She's an advisor to Paul Ryan, who's the architect of the U.S. House Republican plan. And she had a dramatic, I mean, much reminiscent of Bennett. She had a plan that says, hey, the federal government ought to get out of the business of education, housing, highways, social service, economic development, and job training. And those things ought to move to the state and local level. And that would obviously be a radical realignment.
Yes, it would.
Of how we're doing this, but with deficit spending, with debt out of sight. I think maybe it's time to look at what she suggested.
So, Ed, what you're saying is we'd use state and local dollars to fund state and local programs.
Yeah.
And that's basically it in a nutshell.
Well, and I have to say, we have a newly elected local county commissioner, Mr. Renzo, who is not voting for any federal grants coming into Sedgwick County because he's saying that's borrowed money, and I can't sign off on my county government spending borrowed federal money. So,
and he's not real popular among the other county commissioners, but he might have a point here.
Well, and this this system we've got evolved over 100 years. It started simple, but it's really become incomprehensible.
And exactly what you talk about with Governor Bennett, you talk about low-level federal bureaucrats dangling dollars with strings attached. That's still happening today, obviously. I mean, we see it all. You can drive around and see signs of road construction where they're talking about it's paid for by the TARP funds and things like that.
And I think a lot of these battles that are going on have a lot to do with this money that's moving from one level to the other. I mean, one level is taxing or borrowing, sending money to another level and to spend. And it's not going to get reformed overnight, but maybe Bennett's words, Alice Rivlin's ideas, should carry some weight in this time.
You mentioned the frustration that people have with government today because it's just so huge, and you also mentioned that $1 trillion figure, and it's just incomprehensible almost when you think of that kind of money. It's difficult for people even to comprehend what's happening, let alone accept it and deal with it, and maybe they shouldn't have to.
Well, I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to understand it, and it is not incomprehensible to any single person, and the formulas are complicated and quite different, and there's fairly sizable bureaucracies at the national and state level that are in place to carry this out, and I guess I'm looking for a simpler life, you know, and I'd like to have a government that people say, hey, we know where the money's coming from, we know where it's going, we support it.
Well, and I would think this would really impact transparency in a positive way.
Yeah. I mean,
it's hard to tell where everything is.
And back to our county commissioner, he said, you know, if we need to do this, let's use our own money to do it. Now, he may have to follow through on that.
Interesting. Ed, thank you very much. We're out of time in the program. We appreciate you being on this morning.
Absolutely.
If you have any questions or comments about our show, please email me at thisweekinkansas@cake.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.